Welcome. Hello. I am Dr. Patrice Berry. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and here I share educational information on a variety of topics. Today, we're going to talk about confirmation bias. And thank you, Kelly, for leaving this comment. This is a really important topic, especially after the Maya Kowalski trial. You can check my page for the history and any background on that case. Anytime we're looking at a court case or anytime we're looking at jury information, we always want the jury to come with an open mind because our legal system is based on the fact that it's going to be the information presented in court. It shouldn't be people's bias that they come with. Now, we all have bias. And welcome, Sarah. Hello, Laura. So I will say that again. We all have bias. So there is conscious bias. So there are those things that I'm aware of. So sometimes you're aware that you might be more comfortable in certain settings, or you might just naturally be more comfortable in certain situations, but then there are other situations that might bring up a feeling. And sometimes that feeling is based on your past experience, based on things that you've seen, based on, but it's not based on what's happening in that current situation. I will never forget, I had someone in my office one time, and based on their look, I was thinking that they were probably a tattoo artist. And when the person said that they had a pretty straight lace, like common normal, not, I hate to say normal job, but that their job was not some artistic job, I had to acknowledge, I was like, oh wow, based on how you looked, I kind of got a different picture in my mind of what I thought you might do. And we all do this. So there are lots of different types of bias. Today, we're going to focus on confirmation bias. And if y'all want me to cover any other types of bias or any other thought traps or cognitive distortions, I definitely can, because I think being aware of these things helps us grow. And let me share this little, I thought this little cartoon was cute. And it says, "Did you read my paper on confirmation bias?" And then the other person says, "Yes, but it already proved what I already knew." And that's what confirmation bias is. It's that we have an underlying view or an underlying perspective, and then we look for evidence that goes along with that particular perspective. And I did, because we are psych nerds here, I wanted to go back and talk about the history just real quick, because confirmation bias was first studied in 1960 with I believe it was a psychologist, Peter Watson. Let me share this tab. Confirmation bias is a cognitive error that people make when they're only willing to accept new information that confirms what they already believe. This is really common in politics, and that's why I try to get my news from multiple sources. So, especially the way our news is done now. Now, in the past, our news used to be, especially like those major networks, typically your local news may not have a particular slant, but a lot of our national news, there's a, so if you watch Fox News, there's a slant. If you watch MSNBC, there's a slant. CNN is supposed to be, but it's supposed to be more in the middle. But so sometimes I've found that and on NPR, it can go back and forth. But our news, the way that they present it now, they're normally presenting a perspective. And instead of just saying this is what happened and letting people kind of come to their own conclusions. And with those cognitive errors, the reason why this happens, it's really historic. So there, we make probably thousands of decisions every day. And we can't take a whole bunch of energy to make each and every one of those decisions. So some of the things our brain does tends to be more subconscious. And there are these little, and bias is one of those things where sometimes the brain, it just wants to group people neatly. It wants to have these nice and have things in categories where it can understand. But with that, we can have error. So sometimes when people hear my voice, they assume what I might look like. And it's not always how I look. That sometimes when people come, and I can tell because when they see me, they're like, oh, you're Dr. Barry. Or so I don't wear a suit to work. And the only time I wear a suit is if I've been subpoenaed to court. Normally, I wear business casual, and sometimes I wear casual clothes, and I'm still Dr. Barry in a t-shirt and jeans versus being in a suit. But sometimes in our minds, we have an idea of what a doctor should look like. With so back to Peter Watson, he did a study where he had people try to figure out a simple problem, but before giving them the answer to the problem, he wanted them to come up with their own hypothesis of what they thought it was. And what people did is they only tested out the information that fit their hypothesis was. So they were basically looking to prove their particular hypothesis, and that was about half of the participants did that. As tasks get more complex, we tend to have less bias when we have to use more mental energy, but it's for those simple tasks that sometimes we can use some of those simple cognitive shortcuts. And in general, people can fall prey to confirmation bias when developing opinions on a topic. Uh, in general, some people will look for positive cases and resist negative cases. When people make a hypothesis about something, they tend to not look for the evidence that goes against their particular hypothesis. And that was something with the Maya Kowalski trial. I really tried my best to have a neutral perspective and to truly hear, okay, so what is all the information? Now, because I am a child-centered therapist, when I am working with a child, it was hard for me to not center that particular child in the case. And that's why I mentioned in the past, if I ever evaluate the child for court, I don't evaluate the parent. Or if I evaluate the parent, I don't evaluate the child because I know going into that assessment, I would already have some bias. And people need to be aware of their bias. I think it's a good idea sometimes to ask, especially if you're looking for a therapist, if you're looking to start services with someone, to ask, what are some common diagnoses that you work with? Because that'll give you a general idea of what types of things this person tends to diagnose. What do they kind of stay away from? And are they aware of cases that they don't work with? So for me, I don't work with severe dissociation. So if somebody has dissociative identity disorder, I refer them for a particular type of treatment that's really effective for that particular diagnosis. I don't so if somebody's primary diagnosis is, substance related, and, because I do work with people if substance is secondary, if it's a way to cope with depression or anxiety or something else like that. But if somebody is wanting strictly substance treatment, that's not something that I do. And, because sometimes I think doctors can sometimes because in our field or especially in the US, we consider them to be experts, but they're not experts in everything. And I do think it's important for people to be like leery of some of those things. And I did want to share this other article that talks about some examples of confirmation bias. And I have links to all of this down in the chat. And let me know if you all have questions. If you had aspects of this that you wanted for me to cover, please let me know. So, some examples of confirmation bias are not seeking out objective facts, interpreting information to support an existing belief, only remembering details that uphold that belief, and then ignoring information that challenges that particular belief. And um, a confirmation bias is that cognitive bias that favors information that confirms your previously existing beliefs or bias. And this can happen on an individual basis, and it can also happen as a system as well. And they talk about 3 different types in this article, which I thought was interesting. So there can be biased attention, selectively focusing on information that confirms your views while ignoring or discounting information that doesn't. Biased interpretation. This is when we consistently interpret information in a way that confirms our existing beliefs. And then biased memory. And that's where you selectively remember information that maybe portrays a person in a positive light or maybe portrays them in a negative light. The way that I look at things is rarely are situations ever all good or all bad. That we often live life somewhere in the middle. And just because there were positive aspects of a thing doesn't mean that it wasn't harmful or that there wasn't some negative aspect to it. Because often, and I saw the hospital, specifically in the Maya Kowalski trial, John Hopkins, they wanted to portray that their hospital was so amazing and they did all these great things, and that any judgment against them would hurt the work that they want to do for other people. And I think they really wanted to put that in the jury's mind as the jury was going back and deliberating and determining damages that would be awarded to the family. And with that, I think people have to be aware of anything that they're bringing into their own memory, or into their own situation. And um and so I want to talk about it can affect personal relationships, decision making, and then all right, so we have that part. All right, let me come back to the chat to see if I have missed anything. Okay. Oh no, somebody got booted. Oh, hello, Brooklyn. Welcome, welcome. Sarah, thank you for being back. Um, ooh, which part was this? I thought that was a terrible parting statement to make. It was so which part? Um, something I said? I don't know. Maybe I missed something. Maybe I missed something. Sarah is awesome. One of my sometimes things happen in the chat and I'm not exactly sure. A hospital's argument. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Thank y'all for bringing me back. Yes. And you also saw that in the Ferreter case as well, that they were blaming the child for the abuse that the child ended up enduring, because the child may have had some very mild, like based on what was reported, there weren't major, in my opinion, based on what I saw, there weren't major um issues there. If you haven't seen the Ferreter sentencing, oh my gosh. So I did cover that. The sound, I apologize. I had my headphones wired in. Y'all can always let me know if something doesn't look right, if something doesn't sound right, please like scream it in the chat so that I know. My earrings kept tapping the microphone because it wasn't coming through this mic, it was coming through the other one. Yes, and this was another one. And information will often be presented in a way to so the way our court system works, the reason why, so the prosecution goes first and then the defense goes. And while the jury is hearing the prosecution, they're hearing all of this. And then the defense comes to kind of try to say why the information that the prosecution presented maybe isn't accurate or doesn't tell the whole story, or what the holes in that information are. And then you end up coming sometimes there's rebuttal cases, and then they have their closing arguments, and often you end with the prosecution once again. That's typically how our court system goes, and, um, with the Timothy Ferriter case, I was surprised that the judge gave less than the law allowed. So I believe the law said 70 something months and the judge gave 60 months. And when we played it back, it did seem like the so the judge mentions that he was also a Marine in the past. And I think the judge had some compassion. So these are just this is my speculation. I don't know what that judge was thinking or why the judge made the decisions that he made, why the judge decided to consider Timothy Ferriter's possible mental health. I don't know why the judge did that. And the judge seemed to be looking for a reason to downward depart, to give less than the law allowed. And could that be an example of confirmation bias? Because the judge specifically asked, okay, so let's say I am considering doing this. What would be the information that says I can or cannot do that? And he heard arguments from both sides. The defense really to me, didn't present an overwhelming case for why the judge should do that. But it seemed like the judge was looking to give more time than the victim in the case asked for and more time than the defense asked for, but less than what the law allowed. The state wanted 15 years because with being sentenced to 5 years, he'll probably do 2 to 3. Like he probably will not do the entire 5. He will probably do closer to 2 to 3. And so I can't say because legally, ethically, um all I can say is the judge seemed to be asking for a reason why he could downward depart. So take with that what you will, because there did not seem to be a legal an existing legal reason. Now, something in the law, because the judge said something in the law said or any other reasons, and so the judge added something else, and it does look like the state is going to appeal that ruling. The defense is going to appeal the verdict, and I think the state is going to appeal the sentence so that he at least gets that minimum of 70 whatever months, but yeah. And I might be saying it wrong. Remember, I am not a lawyer. So I know it was downward something. Downward judgment. Yeah, like y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was downward something. Confirmation bias, it's something that we all do. But I think if we're aware of it, you can do it less often. So when I get a new client, I don't look at the information that they submit online for why they're seeking therapy or um why they're seeking what's the word? Services. And even if somebody tells me, if they come in saying, I think I might have ADHD, I'd like an ADHD assessment. I don't only assess them for ADHD because there are a lot of different things that can cause difficulties with attention. I also ask people to get a medical evaluation as well because there are medical things that can present like mental health, but it's not, especially the thyroid, any type of endocrine issues, any type of hormone issues. Those things can present like mental health, but they're different and they need a different type of treatment. And so, okay, so downward departure was right. It does, Sarah, you're right. It does sound like some type of like plane taking off or something. And with that, so with my approach to the assessment, the goal is that I'm not only looking for one thing, or just because somebody has a history of trauma doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to meet criteria for PTSD. Like I have these with the DSM-5, I have certain things and I have a certain lens and viewpoint. Now, I do let people know that my style as a therapist, I am conservative with diagnosis. So if this is a 6-year-old and this is their first psych eval ever, or even if I'm their second eval and if somebody else gave a 4-year-old like 8 diagnoses, I'm like, "No, no, like that's way too many diagnoses." So I try to narrow cases down to like their simplest parts. So anytime I see a case and if they're diagnosed with ADHD, OCD, and bipolar disorder, I typically like that's a red flag for me. Like, have you ever been assessed for autism? Because sometimes people can like, oh, they meet criteria for all these things, but is there a different diagnosis that better explains the person's symptoms, that better explains what they're going through? And also, as a psychologist, I also have to look at how they're functioning in different settings. I've met with cases where in one setting, there were a whole bunch of difficulties, and then in another setting, there really weren't any difficulties. And in my office, I didn't see major behaviors or anything like that. So, mental health typically like ADHD wouldn't be like only specific to one setting. Those symptoms would occur across multiple settings. And so being able to do that and to keep an open mind. I will never forget. So locally in my area, I might look for the case if I can. There was a fake psychologist, like for real. Like there was a woman allegedly like and she was found guilty of impersonating a psychologist because she went to court and testified on behalf of people and stuff. And so that's what they were able to find her guilty of like fraud because she did that. And I just knew that her reports were crap. Like that's the like her reports were horrible. And anyone that walked in her door walked away with autism, like everyone, like everybody, she diagnosed everybody with autism. And so there seemed to be a bias. And like she just seemed to think it was and autism, especially in certain communities, it is underdiagnosed. And there are people that do get missed. But this person, like the case would not fit it, and nobody else thought like the school, like nobody else thought there was any concern for this diagnosis, and this individual would find it. And turned out that she had paid for degrees for fake degrees online and had been operating in our area for years. For years. I want to say it might have been like 10 to 15. Like it wasn't like 1 year. Like it was a long period of time. And what ended up happening was the practice that the person was working at ended up closing, and all the people that this person had ever worked with, they ended up having to get reassessed. And, I'm so glad because there was a school psychologist that was like, "Something is not right." And that school psych, because we all knew in the community that, like, so I just stopped referring people to that particular practice because, like, it but I never thought that the person wasn't legit. I just thought they were bad. Like, I just thought they were bad at their job. So there are people that are just bad at their job. That's what I thought. But, like, no, like, this person had never even had a bachelor's. So that let me try to see if I can find it. Okay, I have to try to find it. Uh, y'all, like, when I saw that yes, okay. Okay, I found it. We are going to talk about it. I need to share the screen. And this happened in my area. I had never met this person, so I didn't know them personally. But Virginia psychologist faces lawsuits over fraudulent treatment. And Sharona Avery, uh, who was allowed to treat patients for years while posing as a psychologist despite having no license, no degree, or training. And so one of the individuals, he is a military veteran and received treatments from the psychologist for PTSD. And I think the the fake psychologist would also make recommendations about medication as well, which was so she was arrested, and so this was May 6th. This might have been in 2019, I'm not exactly sure, after reportedly posing as a licensed psychologist for years and working at a closed practice. Although Avery claimed to be a licensed psychologist with 2 doctorates, a master's degree, because one of the places she said she attended was Virginia Tech, and I'm a graduate of Virginia Tech. Investigators has discovered not only was she unlicensed to practice psychology in Virginia, but had never finished college. Law enforcement began investigating Avery following a number of reports from parents in October 2018 who questioned her credentials, accusing her of misdiagnosing their children. Police say she treated hundreds of patients under false pretenses, and many were prescribed potentially harmful medication or impacted by inappropriate diagnoses she made. And so that veteran that received treatment, so then they stopped doing treatment and they were going to go into business together. And so he was suing her because which so first of all, she shouldn't have done that. So you don't stop doing treatment with the patient so that you can go into business with them. That would be a dual relationship. That would be unethical. Like, so it wasn't that they stopped treatment because he was doing so much better. They allegedly stopped doing treatment, excuse me, so that she could like join his business. And um and so there was all of that and it woo. And so, Green so that veteran fired her after discovering she had embezzled more than $13,000 by making unauthorized purchases of jewelry, paying bills, and withdrawals in cash. Wow. Wow. And so, yeah. So that was, like, not only faked 1 degree, like 2. And then was never licensed. And, um, it really did so to my knowledge, the worst thing she did was just, like, she just gave bad diagnoses and bad treatment no, that's still bad. So let's not so Jody's, like, the things Jody's alleged to have done is, like so I was involved in reassessing some of the potential, um, because this spanned a lot of different kids, and our area is not that big. So in our area, we probably have about maybe 5 or 6 psychologists that accept insurance, and maybe 3 of those work with kids. Like, we all know each other relatively well. There are newer people that come in and practice, but, this was a larger agency, and it was very well known by people in the community to, like, just not refer there because the diagnosis would be bad, but nobody ever thought like I said, like, talk about confirmation bias because, like so it never entered my mind that she wasn't that like, not only was she not licensed, but also that she never even had a degree. I just thought it was just bad. And so I think there was somebody else signing off on the reports. I think the prac so I don't know this for sure. I don't know this for sure. I believe that there was a licensed person that was signing off on on the reports. Because in order to have what's called an NPI, a national provider identifier, something like that, like, you have to submit all these records, and for all of these years, um, I would have been a little suspicious of why this person wasn't licensed yet. Because I don't believe they portrayed themselves as a licensed psychologist, but maybe they did. I don't believe they were listed on the Virginia Board of Psychology ever, because normally the boards, they do a really good job making sure to check, because you have to submit internship hours. Like in order to become licensed, there are so many hoops. Good God. So I had to do, not only just for like after you graduate. So before you graduate, you have to have all these, like, you have a whole packet that you put together in order to submit for licensure. And uh um and so and this, I think that practice did close because of this. And nobody ever looked into it. Nobody ever looked into it, which was super, super sad. Um, and like I said, like, because but there was one school psychologist that was done. It was my understanding that a school psychologist in Stafford was like, something's not right, and took some time to dig, do a little bit of research, and there were some red flags, some things weren't adding up, and I think they made an allegation, or they reached out to somebody, and then I guess some parents got word that there were questions about this individual's credentials. And what they ended up doing was parents joined because this ended up being I think it was federal trial. I think this was like a federal thing because of the court, because of the testifying in court and all of that. It was super. And I'm so glad, Sarah. I'm so glad that, because she would still be doing like what she was doing, harming this community. And uh, uh and And that's where my bias was probably just to believe, like, "Hey, who would lie about that?" Like, who would lie? Like, and then, like, because as an employer, the employer typically verifies credentials and transcripts, but I guess so the individual allegedly paid for, like, fake transcripts and so the practice, um, so when I used to hire staff, we would get, the person couldn't give us transcripts. We requested transcripts from the school, or they had to send us like official transcripts. And now in our state, even people that are working towards licensure, they have to submit to the board to be what's called a qualified mental health professional. They've tried to add some different areas of protection there, but, um, it was I love Suits. So I didn't watch Suits, like, when it was popular. I got into, like, a show hole, I think it was last year. I think I finally watched Suits in 2022. Um Maybe it was earlier this year, I don't know, but I know I got into a show hole and I was like, let's just go on ahead and watch it," and I did. I liked it. The first seasons were better. Towards the end, it just kinda got a bit redundant, like, but, I really enjoyed those first seasons, except for he was actually a good fake lawyer, she was not. Like, he was a genius, and, like, he was actually really good at what he was doing. Like, she was sh this is my opinion. Well, and like, there were real questions about, uh, like, it wasn't good. It wasn't it wasn't good. Yeah, it's on, Suits is on Netflix. I will be covering, so Tyler Perry did has a show out on Amazon. It's a documentary about his life, Maxine's baby. I believe I'll be doing that on Saturday. And then I'm also going to talk about twin flames. I think there's a Twin Flames documentary on Amazon Prime too, but I think I watched the one on Netflix. I think there's one on Netflix. So I am gonna cover the Twin Flames. Lots of trigger warnings if you decide to go and watch it. It is super like there's a like so I'm just gonna cover like how control what they call it, high control groups or cults, how those work, and if somebody is concerned that a family or friend like that somebody might be involved in something like that, just what are some red flags that something is a high control group? And then I also like the idea that, not like the idea, but what I'm saying is, as a family, sometimes a family can operate kind of like a high control group as well. And that's what the ferreter situation brought up for me, that there was this secret life of the family that nobody else knew about, and that the girls knew, and that the victim in that case knew to not talk about it. Ah, have you seen this with identical twins? So, the twin flames that I'm talking about is it's a group of people, and it is they're supposed to try to help you find your true love, but it's a lot. So please know, I'm telling you, it is very, very triggering, that whole twin flame stock. And uh so I don't know who Keith, so I'm bad with names. Keith Rainier? I'm bad with names. Let me see who that is. So I okay, a former a cult leader. I will have to research that person because I do not know that person, but with and I can share my screen for the Twin Flames documentary, Netflix. The Netflix one is called Escaping Twin Flames. Oh, and the people in the case, they deny everything. They they deny everything. Um Yes, I will leave that there. Let me share my screen so I can show you all what we will be talking about. So I might go live twice. I might do 2 the same day, or so let me know if it would be better to do this on, because I want to do the Tyler Perry one on Saturday and then maybe go straight into the Twin Flames one after that. Let me know if that would sound good, but I might do it as 2 separate streams. So, but yes, it is super duper triggering, okay? But it's Jeff and Shalia, and she, like, changed her name. It's super, super duper, super triggering. A lot of different allegations. Um, race ends up no, not race, gender identity ends up coming up. Like it took a turn that I was not expecting. Lots and lots of trigger warnings. Yes. Lots of trigger warnings. Um, it's like a it's like a MLM with, like, this, but then they added this religious theme, but it's also to help you find your true love, but, like, it's ugh. So we're gonna talk about it. Oh, the head of Nexium. I didn't know that. So I will have to look into that. And for the Twin Flames one, I want to be joined by a friend of mine that's a kind of an expert on toxic relationship recovery. And so we're trying to plan a joint stream. If that doesn't work, then I'm just going to do it by myself. If it does work, then I'll post that we're going to do it together. Yes. Yeah, yes. Okay, so I'm definitely gonna do the Twin Flames one. I think I'm gonna do the Tyler Perry one, like, at 1:15 on Saturday, and then I think I'm gonna do the, Twin Flames one starting at 2:15. I wanna do a little bit more research and prepare it in a way that'll be easy to talk about, and so we will do that. So in Virginia, a license isn't that expensive, okay? But So I don't know, so the employer typically doesn't pay for your license. So I've been a licensed psychologist in Virginia since 2010, and I've always maintained my own license, and that was something that was required in order to maintain employment. That was something that my employers had me do. And I made more money once I was licensed because they didn't have to pay a supervisor. So before I was licensed, I had to have a supervisor, and then once I was licensed, I was able to operate on my own. And so I don't think it was a matter of anyone paying for it. I think this individual knew that they were likely unable to get licensed because they probably weren't going to have a post like they like I don't think anyone would have signed off on their work. Ooh. My personal opinion, my personal opinion. Yes. So in the Twin Flames documentary, so they are more supposedly more bonded than soulmates, and we're gonna get into it because there are a lot of red flags in that documentary and in some of their assumptions. But yes. All right. All right. So I hope y'all have a good holiday. If people are celebrating, the holidays can be hard. And so if the holidays are hard, just take care of yourself. I posted something on the community tab because around the holidays there can be a lot of grief that comes up. And so just be gentle with yourself. If you are visiting family that maybe can be a little bit toxic, make sure to have your exit plan. So if dinner starts at 5, maybe you show up at like 5:30, maybe you have something else planned by like 7. And so make sure to take care of yourself. My Christmas tree is already up, and so I did that this morning. I might put out the Christmas lights today outside, or I might wait until Friday. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. And then if they don't have anybody that they're getting together with, if you have friends, if you're with yourself, if you have work friends or um and then if people are gonna be alone for the holidays, YouTube, like, there will probably be people streaming. I won't be streaming on Thursday, but there will probably be people streaming. I meant to stream this on TikTok too, and I forgot. I just realized. I totally meant to stream it on TikTok, and I totally forgot. And so, I appreciate you all, and I hope y'all have a good holiday, and I will see y'all on Saturday. Bye.